So a video game franchise I feel just never really gets enough love has to be the Fable franchise. I love Fable. It was one of those games that I have played every single one from start to finish, apart from that awful Kinect version, but we're not gonna talk about that. That one doesn't exist. That's not canon, okay? It's not part of the franchise in my eyes. But when they announced the new Fable, oh my god, I have never been so happy to see a game be announced. I love Fable. It's just, I love the storylines. I love the fact that you get to create your own characters. It's just really goofy kind of British humour, and it's just fantastic. I love everything about Fable, and each one has amazing characters, has amazing stories, and it's just one of the only games that has always kind of gripped me from start to finish. I have to kind of go through and finish this story, and not only does it have an amazing story, but there's all these amazing side quests that you can do. You know, you can get married, you can have children, you can become good or evil. The fact that a lot of the games kind of reflects how evil or how good you are. I think it was maybe Fable 2 that had that aspect where if you were more good or evil, you started to physically change. And I think you kind of do get that in the other Fable games as well, but it was more prominent in the second one, where you would kind of become more, evil with like horns, and also it depended on how much damage you took, how scarred you became. It was just very in-depth for its time, I felt, and I just thought it was just really kooky and fun and very, it takes a lot for me to kind of play a fantasy game. That's not really my sort of thing, but I loved that world. Just this really cute little fantasy world where you could be chaotically good or chaotically bad, and just brilliant characters, and also, who doesn't love a good chicken kick? It's every now and then you just need to kick a chicken, and Fable lets you do that. And that, my friends, is why it's an amazing franchise. No chickens were actually harmed in the making of these games or videos.
A franchise that I've always loved, mainly because of the art style initially. That's what got me in. Comic book artist Joe Madureira's art style. I love the Darksiders franchise, and I feel like it just, literally the embodiment of this title never gets enough love, because if you come across someone who's a Darksiders fan, like me, they're always the same. They're always just going, oh my god, it's so great. It has so much to offer. But because it's forever in that sort of B tier space, that you want to champion it as a fan. You want to tell people, hey, just give it a shot, give it a chance. And I guess to some degree, maybe the reason that it hasn't taken off as much as it could is because each individual game feels fairly different. Darksiders 1 was kind of this weird amalgam of God of War style combat with sort of Zelda style dungeon puzzles, and it even had a portal gun in there with the blue and orange portals that you could go through. But then Darksiders 2 kind of took a lot more from Diablo and had this whole loot grind thing, and you were sort of ranking up, swapping out weapon sets and armor every sort of 20 minutes or so. Darksiders 3 was then delayed for years and years and came back to be another sort of God of War adjacent combat model, Dark Souls style with the camera over the back. And then we had Darksiders Genesis, which is kind of this in-between thing, which is again is a top-down, almost Diablo-style thing, but you have a lot of twin-stick elements, twin-stick shooter elements, and it's kind of built more like a co-op game. That variety, though, is why I love it so much. It reminds me, as I'm talking, of why I love bands like Metallica. I think that I want someone who can have a confident IP that is confident in experimenting with a variety of different approaches to, different mechanics and things like that. So it will be the Darksiders franchise. I absolutely adore the art style. I think that it's just this great chunky World of Warcraft adjacent approach to designing characters and worlds, and it's just the idea that you're just playing as the Four Horsemen, and you're sent back down to Earth, and you're trying to balance all these different cosmic forces and ancient timeless forces to restore balance and help with the general progression of the universe. There's a lot of stuff going on, but it's just, there's something about that franchise that in a way reminds me of Legacy of Kain, and I think that that's the core feel that I'll just never get sick of. It's Shakespearean grandiose dialogue delivered from gothic individuals doing their best to sort of fight, cosmological, Lovecraftian entities left, right, and center. So give me Darksiders. Give me Darksiders 4. We're still waiting on that. And if you want to know what the hype is, just dive into any of the Darksiders games. They're all pretty brilliant.
Hello again. So, we're talking about video game franchises that don't get enough love. There are so many, I think personally, and I'll avoid being a cliche and saying a bunch of Tom Clancy stuff, and even then, in recent years, I would say that maybe it doesn't deserve the love given that we've had so many kind of entries. However, I will be very cheeky here now and say, I'm going to mention one of the most popular video game first-person shooter franchises of all time, but I'm going to mention a sub-franchise that falls underneath it now. Everyone loves Battlefield. Everyone absolutely adores Battlefield. Okay, maybe you don't. Maybe you're one of those fellas who really dislikes the fact that you'll get shot and maybe you have to spend a couple of minutes walking to a new position, whatever. I don't care. I love Battlefield, and I really enjoy all the recent releases. You know, Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4, you know, and Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 5. However, my gateway into Battlefield was through Bad Company, and I still think that Battlefield Bad Company 2 is kind of the best Battlefield we've ever gotten now. I know obviously there have been improvements across the board in terms of gameplay and story and whatever. Well, okay, maybe not story, the single player stuff for Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 5 was very bad. But in terms of gameplay, the Battlefield formula as it is now, and in terms of, you know, Frostbite and how it looks, is incredible. It looks absolutely phenomenal. All I'm saying is that Bad Company 2, in particular, there was a charm to the gameplay. There was... it's something... It's almost imperceptible trying to put my finger on why Bad Company, to me, works better than the main Battlefield franchise. And I think it might be down. It might be down to the humor and tone of maybe, you know, the single player or whatever. But the multiplayer as well, it just seemed to work better for me. And I think that might be because of the focus on Rush, which I still think is a very, very good game mode. And, you know, I like Conquest too, but in terms of getting that sense of momentum and that grand scale, which we'd later see in Grand Operations and Battlefield 1, Bad Company really kind of nailed that formula. And in particular, you know, we had Bad Company Vietnam, which was incredible too. And I kind of think it's time that DICE go back and revisit the Bad Company formula, and I don't think that's going to happen. I don't genuinely think they'll ever come back to Bad Company, which sucks because you could do so much with that franchise. You could maybe do a Bad Company Korea. You could maybe do a Bad Company Cold War. You could maybe do a Bad Company in the 90s or whatever. You could do so much with that franchise, that sub-franchise rather. And, you know, Bad Company 2 remains, you know, I know all the other Battlefield games have outsold it since, but, you know, Bad Company 2, they were real kind of watershed moments for the Battlefield franchise in terms of going from a very popular and successful PC franchise, but going on to something that would, you know, really, really break the console market and act as a direct competitor to Call of Duty. And I do think that maybe DICE would be wise to give it another look. Maybe that comes in the form of a smaller scale kind of, you know, Star Wars Squadrons-esque title where it's not as big as the main Battlefield things. I don't know. I don't think it'll happen. And I'm more than content with the current Battlefield franchise. But I do think Bad Company needs more love. And I do think that DICE would be smart to maybe give it another look and, you know, there is just something about it, and I'm probably not selling it very well right now, but definitely something about Bad Company in particular that I like and prefer to the main Battlefield entries. It might be because the new Battlefield entries are very serious, but Bad Company and Bad Company 2 were so good, and I would definitely love to see another one in the future. I don't know what setting it should be, but I think it could definitely work. So yeah, Bad Company.
I'll tell you what franchise needs more love. It's Brothers in Arms, which was a World War II themed shooter series from back in the day, like mid to early 2000s sort of era. And I know what you're thinking, Josh, this was just yet another World War II shooter in a sea of World War II shooters. And you're not entirely wrong, but even back then, with all of that in mind, with the desire for something new, and Brothers in Arms did something at least different enough to make it stand out from the pack, and that was put its focus on characters and story and sort of immersion. Its gameplay was much more squad focused, as you took these men through this war and you focused not only on their bond, obviously, but also in, you know, giving them commands, telling them where to go, helping you out as a team. in a way that most shooters at the time, at least most straightforward shooters, didn't really do. They were more focused on, like the sole hero moving through enemy lines on their own and overcoming insurmountable odds, where this really felt like you were a unit. And I remember it had like these small details that at the time just blew me away. I remember reading a magazine, maybe it was Official Xbox Magazine or one of those, where the developers, Gearbox, were touting the fact that in gameplay your characters and NPCs would trip while they were running, so you would be moving from cover to cover and you'd see your boys trip over and fall, and at the time that was like mind-blowing. That was the most immersive thing I've ever seen, which is quite a funny commentary, I suppose, on how easily surprised and blown away we all were back then, but genuinely at the time, that was like something that would keep you in the moment, something that would allow this game to stand out from the rest. It was just so solid. The gunplay was really punchy and satisfying. The characters were awesome. The setting was authentically brought to life, as far as I'm aware. And it was just a series that resonated with me at a time where any game could resonate with me, but this stood out from the pack, and unfortunately it ended after the third game, which was awesome, but came after the switch to modern military shooters, and we haven't heard from it since. There were rumors that they were going to do this sort of Furious 4 Brothers in Arms like thing that took it down a cartoony route that nobody wanted and thankfully didn't get made. And at this point, I'm not sure whether I want it to return, because I don't necessarily trust modern day Gearbox to do it justice and not to transform it into like a live service gimmicky game, even though they still do pretty good job with Borderlands. And I just don't trust them to recapture the magic of what this series offered, because I feel like in general video games have sort of moved away from it, which sucks, but I'll always have those original games. And if you've never played them before, if you've got an older console lying around, if you're a fan of World War II shooters, you absolutely need to give this a go. And if they remaster the entire trilogy, I would be there day one, hopefully reliving my nostalgic memories of the series, and it hopefully living up to the expectations that I've set for them in my head. Hopefully they're as good as I always thought they were back in the day. And now I might just pie off the PlayStation 5 actually, get the PlayStation 2 out and the Xbox 360 and play through this series instead. Yeah, I'm going to cancel my pre-order. 2 seconds.